Start recording. Right, good evening, everyone. My name is Johnathan George. I'm an ACP working in the Emergency Department of the Royal Glamorgan Hospital in South Wales. And tonight's session is going to be a session all about taking charge. And I will just share my screen with you. Hopefully you can all see this.
Oh no, what happened there? Okay, what do I do there?
Okay, so a little bit of background information for all our webinars. This session is being recorded. We will have this available as a catch-up session on our website for people who weren't able to attend today, so they can go in and view the recordings as you can yourselves. Because there's multiple screens on, try and keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking, because this can interfere with some of the session. You can come off mute very quickly by clicking on the spacebar or clicking on the little microphone. We've got the chat function on the side. If there's any issues with reception, turn off your camera sometimes can help. And at the end, there is a feedback form that you can fill out to give you a little bit of, give us some evaluation of the session, and then you should get a certificate emailed to you. The aim of this session is to get an understanding of how to run a shift in the emergency department, get some insight into some of the aspects of the role of the nurse in charge, and have fun. So I want this to be a fun, friendly session. Nobody gets stressed about. Just see how this rolls out. I thought a good way to start would be for everyone to introduce themselves. So say your name, what your role is, and what you want to get out of this session. So I'm John, as I said already. I'm an ACP. In my previous career, I used to be a charge nurse and a deputy charge nurse. So I've taken charge of emergency departments. One of the things that I found when you take charge is often you are dropped into the role. You don't get a lot of training. You might get a couple of shadow shifts, but a lot of places don't get a lot of training before you get to take charge of the emergency department. That was something I kind of wanted to look at and to change, and wanted to see about creating some sort of simulated experience, which today's will be, to try and ease you into taking charge of a department. Do you want to go around and introduce yourselves?
Who's next on your screen, John?
I have got Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma Edwards, practice educator in an emergency department in Lyme and Bevan. I don't take charge of the shift anymore unless I'm covering the nurse in charge for breaks as such. But I've done the role in the past for over 20 plus years.
Kira.
Kira's put all her introduction in the chat, John. It says, hello, I'm Kira. I'm from Lagan Valley Hospital in Northern Ireland, and I work as Band 5 nurse in A&E.
Tanya.
Oh, sorry, miles away then. I work in the A&E department at the Grange Hospital, band 6, and I used to take charge, but I don't anymore.
Nessa.
Hi, my name's Nessa. I take charge in an emergency department in Dublin. I'm quite new to the role, so this is, hopefully I'll get something insight out of it. And like you said just there, I definitely was thrown into the role. So I'm in it like 6 months now, and there wasn't a lot of training beforehand. I do have to apologize. I will have to dip off in very soon into this. Unfortunately, I've a clashing schedule, so I'm very grateful that this is recorded. So I apologize if I do fall off the screen. I will be catching up certainly, because there's a lot I hope to get out of this webinar, especially with my new into the taking charge role.
Fiona.
I'm Fiona McDade. I'm nurse lead with the National Emergency Medicine Programme in Ireland, which is charged with improving quality and access to care in emergency departments in Ireland. I've been emergency nursing since 1987, and obviously when I was clinical, I was CNM3 since 2001, but prior to that, I would have been taking charge on all my shifts probably from about 1990, because I'm vintage enough to know to be where you were thrown in charge at a very early stage. So we just hope to share some of the nuggets that we've learned along the way.
Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm working as a nurse manager 1 here in Ireland as well, Nace General Hospital. And as a nurse in CNM1, sometimes there are instances that I cover shift leader or in charge role as well. That's all. Thank you.
Jessica?
No, sorry, I couldn't have moved it then. I'm Jess. I'm a Band 5 nurse in the Grange University Hospital in accident and emergency, and I'm hoping to progress in my role. So I'm hoping that this will help me and not throw me in at the deep end, as you say.
And Jeanette?
Evening, everybody. My name is Jeanette Welsh, and I'm the lead for education on the FEN board. I spent most of my A&E career being a practice development nurse. So I've been a practice development nurse in emergency care for donkey's ages. I've obviously taken charge of emergency departments during that time as well, and I was very much dumped in it on the take charge thing. So really keen that people learn before they have to take charge, or as soon as possible after they've been given the role.
Yeah. Fabulous. Right, let me put my screen back up. Okay, so this is our virtual department. It's a small little DGH department that can be quite busy. This is a simulated shift that's going to take place on a Saturday day shift from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's a department that's got 2 recess bays. We've got 7 trolleys and majors. We've got 3 spaces in the minor injury unit. And fortunately, it's got a small children's environment as well with 2 spaces. Amazingly, for a Friday night, the night shifters worked really, really hard, and we're coming into an empty department. There are no patients in here. There were no cardiac arrests overnight, no trauma calls. The arrest trolleys have all been checked. The department has been cleaned thoroughly, so there are no issues going into you. The only thing the nurse in charge from the night shift wants to report to hand over: there was an intoxicated patient in the middle of the night with a facial injury. He was very, very aggressive, was demanding, claimed to be an actor, was a bit upset that we didn't know who they were. They were very rude, and then they stormed out of the department without being seen. The report for the site is there's capacity. There are beds across the site for all our specialities. All our checks completed. And we're going to start the shift. There's going to be various tasks the way this is broken down. So the way I want this session to work, there'll be, think of it kind of like the crystal maze, I guess. We'll have a task. One person will take the role of nurse in charge for that task. They can discuss things with their team members. Then at the end, we can have a little debrief to talk it through, and then we can move on to another little task. Okay. Who wants to go first as nurse in charge? I need a volunteer.
I'm happy to go first.
Fabulous. Okay, so first task you do as nurse in charge at the start of your shift is going to be your allocation. So this is going to be reasonably simple for you guys. So we need to do an allocation of our staff for the department, where people are going to work and who we've got in place. That's you in red, you're the nurse in charge. For clinicians, we've got 2 doctors and an ACP. So Kate is the middle grade on for the shift, Mike is the SHO on for the shift, and your ACP is Kira. So that's your clinicians for the next 12 hours. Coming in, you are going to have Ben. Ben is a experienced Band 7 charge nurse. He's got ALS and APLS trained. You've got Tom, who is one of the experienced staff nurses who's been in the department for a while. We've got Theo, he is newly qualified. He's only been in the department 2-3 months. He's very keen, very eager. We've got Sue. Sue is another experienced Band 5 staff nurse who's been in the department for a couple of years. Then we've got John, who is a Band 3 healthcare support worker. He can plaster, he can do ECGs, he can do venipuncture, and he's also doing his nurse training. We've got Claire, who is a bank healthcare support worker. This is her first shift in the department. She's keen to understand how everything works in A&E. And we've got Jen, who's a healthcare support worker. She's a Band 2. She can do ECGs and she's doing her venipuncture training. We've also got Ari, who is a student nurse. Her mentor has phoned in sick for the shift. There is an agency nurse coming in to help, and that is Anne, and Anne will be on shift at 9 a.m. So you've got 2 hours before she arrives. She's never worked here before, so you don't know her. Who would you like to allocate and where?
Okay, so I would put Ben in resus, and I would probably put maybe Jen with him, just because she sounds like she can do a little bit, but like she'd have the support of Ben to be able to keep up, because we seem to be low on staff that know the department. Okay. And I would have rather have John, who knows his stuff, down in minors, because he'd kind of be on his own. He'd be able to run the show himself down there. And then that would leave the last, then Claire would be with majors. Okay. My 2 other concerns are allocating Anne and Ari. Anne, because she doesn't know the department, I'd need to put her with somebody that could kind of show how things are done. And Ari is so junior, I would have rather put her with as well. So I don't know who to fill really in that major's role with another experienced staff. But I think I'd rather have the student with a nurse. So I would put Ari in majors, and I would have her put with perhaps who did I allocate? Maybe maybe Theo. Then I would have, for the peds and triage, you'd need 2 strong nurses, so I'd have to have Tom and Sue in either of them. So maybe I can't remember the difference between Sue and Tom.
They're both very similar. Tom and Sue are both experienced Band 5 staff nurses who've been here for a while.
Okay. So like Tom and peds and Sue in triage.
Okay. Fab. So, sounds good. Allocation, it is the first thing that you've got to do in every shift. When I used to take charge, I would come in early and then look at everyone who has phoned in sick or hasn't arrived, and then have a bit of a groan over my cup of coffee and then try to put stuff down. It is tricky. Your allocation might not last the entirety of your shift. You might have to move things around depending on the pressure of the department. You might have to borrow people to help in different areas. You may have somebody disappear halfway through your shift. They have to go off sick or something else, or they have to go on a transfer to another hospital with an ambulance. So there's various things that can affect your allocation. Ideally, the nurse in charge should be supernumerary. I know that isn't always the case in every A&E department, so sometimes the nurse in charge will end up helping out with looking after triaging ambulance patients that are coming in, or will be helping out as an extra nurse for resus. But ideally, your nurse in charge should be supernumerary, so they can manage what is going on the shop floor. I assume the others would agree with that. Fine, so that was your first task. That was easy. Do you want to keep charge for the next task?
No, thank you.
Okay, who wants to go next?
I'll go next, John, if you want. It's fine.
Okay. So we're coming up to 2 hours into the department. It's coming up to 9 o'clock, so your agency nurse should be arriving. So in a lot of departments I've worked, we have a huddle mechanism. So every so often the nurse in charge will gather with the senior clinician in charge of the department to go through the patients that are in the department. They will go through any safety issues that we have in the department. We'll talk about any bed flows. You might have site management coming down. So a lot of places we call this a huddle. I can't speak for every A&E department. They'll look at plans and try to predict any issues that might be coming up in the next couple of hours as well. Sometimes as a nurse in charge, you'll have to leave the department to go for a site meeting. Sometimes people will come and visit you in the department. So you need to be prepared. So Emma, what would you need to know before you went for your huddle or your site meeting?
So I'd be focusing on patient safety and capacity. So I'd want to know the current volume that's in the department. So I'll be asking for a snapshot of the patients, the ones that I'm worried, the staff are worried about, the ones that have got high news or high water lows, any critical care requirements, focusing on flow really. So anyone that's been seen, that's been referred and waiting for speciality input, any delays waiting for speciality input. So if they've been referred to 2 hours ago, for example, where are we with chasing up that SHO for surgery or orthopedics? And just getting a handle on, as I said, a snapshot of the department so I can relay that information in the huddle to try and encourage pull from the department rather than push.
So one of the things I used to do, which you probably do yourself, is I would walk around the entirety of the department, especially at the start of the shift. I'd want to talk to all the staff members, find out everything I can about the patients that we've got in the department. Coming up to 9 o'clock, you're also going to have your agency nurse arriving, hopefully, who doesn't know the department. So you want to make sure you've got somebody who's available to orientate them to the department. It might not be yourself, but it might have to be somebody else.
Yeah, so if I didn't know them, John, I'd have to be checking their ID and doing all the safety checks before they actually start the shift.
Yeah, and one of the other things that might be happening in the morning, depending on your break systems, you may have to have some staff going off for a breakfast break. So you might want to make sure that you've got staff cover for that as well. So this is our little map of the department. This is our patients that we've currently got. So things I'd want to know is what is the news score of the patient? So how sick are they? What's the category of being triaged into? We keep track of the time that they're in, so we know how long they're waiting, if they're coming up to 4-hour breaches or anything else. And keep track of who's been seen and who hasn't been seen. So at this time in the morning, 9 o'clock, you have got an empty recess, which is fab. You've got 3 patients in recess, and you can see one of them is waiting to be seen. You've got 1 in peds who's waiting to be seen. Somebody's seen this patient in minors, and you've got 2 waiting for triage. Would you be happy with the state of your department right now, Emma?
At 9 o'clock, that's fantastic. Yes, it'd be lovely. It'd be a dream. So
feel safe?
There's no long waits for triage. There's no problems with flow at this moment. And you've got empty recess trolleys, which are always a bonus.
Yeah. So some places will have a little handover format. So you might have a little format like this where you would write down how many are waiting to be seen in each area. Things you might want to be aware of to hand over when you're talking to people is your longest wait to be seen, because that could be a bit of a risk and a concern, your longest length of stay in the department, and always keep an eye on your triage weights, because that can clock up without you realizing quite quickly, and that can become a safety risk, because you want to know that people in the waiting room are being assessed and that there isn't a chest pain or a stroke or something waiting out there that's been missed. I would also be documenting if you've had a staffing issue. So you weren't fully staffed for the first 2 hours. So we were down a nurse until this agency nurse arrived. And in some places you might document a little local escalation as well. Do you want to talk about escalation, Emma? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so escalation, you'll be, as a nurse in charge, you'll be working alongside a consultant or a senior registrar. And depending on the type of hospital that you work in, you might also have a point of care person or a site manager that you liaise with for operational and bed management flow. They might necessarily not be based in the ED, but you'll have regular contact at site meetings or with the huddles, depending on how the setup of the hospital is. With the escalation, it all depends on capacity within the ED. So you'll have a local ED escalation, but you'll also have a hospital escalation. So they should run alongside each other. So for an ED escalation, if I start going over 30-minute waits at triage, there's an internal mechanism that you want to activate. If there's no resus beds, for example, then I'd be escalating that up to the site manager. And depending on how many empty beds you've got, or how many long waits you've got, or how many ambulances you've got outside, you'll be given a colour category. So you have the ED escalation, but the site management team, the hospital management team, don't use the ED escalation when they report that to Welsh Government. And I'm not sure how it works in England, but it's the hospital site as a whole that gets fed up the food chain, not just the ED bit. Am I right in saying that for everywhere else?
I would assume it'd be similar. Jeanette, does it work similarly in Wales in England for escalation? Is there a separate site escalation, or do they work on the A&E as well?
Different ways of doing it?
Yeah,
depending, but largely the same.
Yeah. Sit reps is the term that's used in Wales and England, and that's just another term for Welsh Government for reporting.
It might be helpful, folks, to recognise that SITREP simply is short for situation report. Okay, so all it means is what exactly is the situation now. And our bed management produce SITREP reports from automated data kind of 5-6 times a day. It gets fed through to senior managers. So sometimes you'll think all is going well, then a senior manager descends and you think, how the heck did they know there was a problem? They've just received the SITREP.
Yeah, they'll come down and that's surprising. You have no idea they were coming in.
Yeah. The SITREP report is at 8.2 and 8 in Ireland.
Fab. As you can see, an ambulance has just pulled up outside, but that shouldn't be an issue either in this department because it's offload space. So we're not going to worry about ambulances right now. Right, Emma. The phone rings.
Okay.
If you can hear it. Hello, I'm calling from the police. There's been reports of a hit and run in town. We've been informed that there's a drunk driver that has hit a bike and driven into a tree. The occupant has fled the vehicle. He had blood on his face and was holding his arm. We need to know if anyone with this injury has attended the department today. Can you tell me, is there anyone there?
Okay. So I thank them for making contact, and I would not give any information out, but I would need to confirm who they are, and I would want their PC number and a contact number to ring them back should I get any information that I felt needed sharing. But I was also remind them that unless there's something reportable within my NMC, I wouldn't actually be, and there was a public safety issue or a criminal offence within the department, I wouldn't just be able to ring them up off the cuff. So I would have that conversation with them.
Oh, I don't think that's good enough. We really need to know about this person. If they come into your department, you've got to contact us straight away if they arrive.
Okay. So I would be asking them they can come over and they're welcome to sit and wait in the waiting room. Should you?
Oh, we haven't got time for that. We're far too busy. You need to contact us straight away.
So I would politely remind them that I'm not duty bound to, and I need to practice within the governance law. And if they had any further concerns, then I'm more than happy to discuss it with their sergeant or their inspector, and they can liaise with the site manager.
Oh, well, can I take your name then, nurse?
Absolutely. My name's Sister Emma Edwards, and I would also potentially give them my staff department telephone number and my NHS email if they wish to pursue this further. And as a follow-up, then I would mention the name of either the ED consultant or the site manager, but I would keep it professional and polite.
Fab. Well done. Oh, that's a bit late. Right. How did that go? You happy with that? Happy with interacting with phone calls from the police? Have you had phone calls like that?
I actually had a conversation with a police officer the other week about a stabbing. Well, it wasn't a knife injury, knife crime. And I called them. I didn't need the patient's permission, I know, but I called them on the patient's behalf and reported it. And they came over a bit later, the CID officers, and took all the information, and they gave me a form, and they'd left it with the nurse practitioner, and the nurse practitioner was going to photocopy the notes and give it to them. And apparently there's been a recent law that change in paperwork process that they could release it there and then. So I questioned it and said, I don't actually think that's right. And there is a process where you go through the medical secretaries, but if it's live and it's of a high risk nature and it needs to be done there and then, you need to go through your inspector. And as soon as I mentioned the word inspector, she was like, oh, right, yeah, actually, now you've said that, I think you're right. I'll go back to him and I'll come back to you.
Our police colleagues, they are fantastic and we work very closely with them. And I don't want to be negative towards them in any way, shape or form, but they are under a lot of pressure with the cases that they get. And on a regular occurrence, you will find them coming to the department, sometimes physically attending, sometimes over the telephone, looking for copies of notes, looking for various information. But there is processes in place that have to be followed. So you just need to be careful about that.
In England, we've got something called a DP7, which the police have to produce, and the police inspector has to send through a DP7. And if that is not produced, we will not produce the notes. And we will always produce notes if a DP7 is sent through. And within my trust, that's in Gloucestershire, if you need notes out of hours and it's super urgent, then our head of legal services is on call, so to speak, and DP7s are sent through to her, and then she authorises us to release the notes to the police. But you never, 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 never give them the originals, ever.
No.
You must only ever give them a copy. And the other thing that Emma was saying about the road traffic accident, there is a slight glitch in that. The road traffic accident of 1974, sorry, I'm really sad on this one, section 4 subsection 2 says that you are obliged to tell a police officer on their request the name and address of the person you believe to be driving a vehicle that has had an accident. Collision, we're not allowed to call them accidents anymore. So that's never been rescinded yet. So just be aware that if the police ask you for the name and address of the person you believe to be the driver, you're obliged to give them that. You're not obliged to give them the name and details of anybody else in the vehicle, just the driver. And they will always follow that up with, what's his injuries? So they're not really, I have to stress this because I chased this up with police because I found it really irritating. They're not really looking for you to breach confidentiality. They don't want a catalogue. What they want to know, and they have a funny way of asking about it, but what they want to know is, do I have to close the road for a serious accident investigation? And if you don't tell them, they'll have to close the road until they're clear on it. So when you're sitting in that queue and the police have got the road closed, it's because some A&E nurse wouldn't tell the police something. So what you need to do is simply say, not life-threatening, not a head injury, not a neck injury. You can come and see them tomorrow, or we're likely to discharge. As soon as you say likely to discharge, they say, fine, I'll catch them tomorrow, and then they leave off bothering you. So it's once you understand that, it's actually quite straightforward to deal with road traffic accidents and the police. Because Emma's absolutely right, and you're right too, John, they will keep challenging you just because they'll get it in the neck from their sergeant or inspector if they haven't got a result. So they're trying to
getting lots of pressure.
Preempt a telling off.
Yeah.
I've always found it really useful with some of the junior officers that come in and you think, oh, that's not quite right from my experience in the past, and you don't want to put them on the spot because you want to have that therapeutic working relationship. So if I say something like, oh, can you just contact your sergeant and double check that, because that's not my experience in the past. And the sergeants, and it's very rare that it's gone up to an inspector, but they've always been really helpful then when they've had, like we do, if we're not sure, we'll ask for help and advice. And the junior police officers accessing the sergeants can be really useful then.
Is there any differences in Ireland, Fiona, with police interactions?
No,
shared.
The documents can't be shared. There's a formal process to go through where they have to write into the consultant on call for the day to get documents released. And if it's sort of a big incident, then the communications boards for the hospital group are usually involved if it's a very serious incident, so that everything goes through the right legal channels. But the laws are very similar between Ireland and the UK around these kind of incidents. And as the others said, you really want to have that good relationship with the police, or the Gardaí as they are here, because at the other side of the coin is you never know when you'll need them in your department. And if you don't have the good working relationship, then when you're in trouble, they may not be as quick to respond as you might like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And certainly most of my A&E departments I've worked in, the police have been in our waiting room a lot with patients that they've brought in. I've spent many night shifts with half the police force out there with multiple patients, and you want to have a good working relationship with them.
Yeah, and just trying to manage them through the department so that they're not kind of the sideshow in the waiting room, and just you know,
because you don't want them making disruption.
No.
Okay, fab. Who's next to take charge? Oops. Anybody want to take charge?
Do you want me to do it again? Or Jess, do you want me to help you?
Yeah, do you mind? I'll give it a go.
You don't have to go on your own. It can be a team sport.
Yes, please.
Okay.
You answer it then, Jess, and then I'll chip in.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to come up to our next huddle. So can you remember, what were we going to look at before our huddle? This is coming up to, I think this is going to be 11 o'clock huddle.
So we was going to update ourselves with the department, and give figures and the department status.
Yeah.
So go around, check
That's
on
it.
everyone. So this is what we've got.
So you're getting that snapshot again.
Okay.
So both our resus beds are full. There's a 99-year-old cat 1 with a news of 21 in resus who has been seen and has only been in there a couple of minutes. There's a cat 2 in resus who's been seen and looks like they're off to CT. You've got 2 empty spaces in majors. It looks like you've got a 27-year-old waiting to go home. You've got 1 patient in peds, 2 people being seen in minors at the moment, and a few people in the waiting room waiting for triage. You happy with the state of the department right now?
I'm a bit worried about the department now because we haven't got any resus bays as such, and there are quite a few people waiting in the waiting room, which even though there's 1 going home from majors, there still may not be enough room for the people coming through.
So what would you like to do at the moment, just looking at the department?
I would like to know a bit more about the patients as well and see, because I know that there's 2 in resus. Obviously the 1 looks like it definitely can't come out, but I would investigate the other 1 in resus and see what's actually going on there.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
because
Yeah,
you're quite best depending on the CT result is
yeah,
whether
you can
downgrade.
pull out and have a free resus bay, because that's really worrying me that there's nowhere to take anyone in terms of resus.
Yeah.
I would always try and have a space you can pull out resus, because
Yeah.
you want to be ready for the next ASH ice that's coming in, because that could
Yeah.
come in at any time.
Yeah.
Fab.
Or if from CT, they could go elsewhere. They don't necessarily need to come back to A&E, but I know that all depends on the diagnostic.
So if that was a 45-year-old cat 2 abdominal pain that's gone to CT, do you think they might be coming back? They might be going somewhere else depending on the CT?
It depends on the CT really. They could be obstructed. They may, if they're stable enough, they could, they could go to theatre. And if not, they could then, if they're stable enough, go back into majors.
Yeah.
Freeing up the resus bay.
I'd also look at your 27-year-old in majors who's waiting for transport. Does he need to be holding up a trolley now?
Yeah, he could possibly sit out in the waiting room as well, yeah.
I'd want to find out. So it could be that he's a 27-year-old who is bedbound, hoisted, all care, and he can't go out. Or he could just be a 27-year-old who had a few drinks overnight. He's going home waiting for mum to come collect him.
Yeah. And you might, depending on your setup of your hospital, you might have short stay options that you could bounce them over to, or you could use a discharge lounge. So it depends on what else is available.
Yeah.
So short stay. There was guidelines out that any departments ideally should have an observation ward attached to them, and it does make a lot of sense. The departments I've worked that have got an observation CDU, short stay, whatever you call it, a little ward that is dedicated for A&E patients that don't need to be in the department, but they're waiting for transport, they're waiting for some blood results, they're waiting for a few hours post sedation. They could be poisons patients that are staying under A&E, but they're having NAC, so they could go in there. It's a very, very useful thing to have in your department, but I know not a lot of departments are fortunate enough to have them. But that's a very good thing to mention.
Especially with COVID. Ours is taken over with COVID patients at the minute.
So resus is full. It did say 1 to be seen, but ignore that. They were both seen. Majors has got 5 with 2 waiting to be seen. Peds has got 1 that has been seen. Minors, 1 has been seen as having treatment, and the other is just about to be seen. They've been called in. 2 ambulances have just arrived. But it looks like you've got space to offload them. Your longest length of stay in the department is 3 hours, 45 minutes. And I believe that 3 hours, 45 minutes is our young boy who's waiting for transport home. Longest wait to be seen is just under 2 hours. Our longest wait for triage is 45 minutes. And we've got 2 people waiting for medical beds. So what would you say our issues are out of this if you were reporting them at your huddle?
So I would say that the triage time is too long because the aim is 15. We need to get people moving, because if the 2 ambulances come in, they take all of our space. So are there any possible beds for the medical people? Also, do we have a discharge lounge for the boy to wait to go home, to get rid of to sort of get another bed?
Yeah.
Definitely escalate the resus situation because it's still full, and if anything comes in, we're in hot water.
That's it. And the managers don't like ambulances outside, and nobody does, and it's not what we want. But if as soon as an ambulance is queuing outside, you tend to find that site management team, as the hierarchy, do take note, because they'll get phone calls off WAST.
They'll be twitchy. They'll appear. They'll want to know what's going on. Why are these ambulances outside waiting?
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me you had a full resus department?
Now, interestingly, we've got a slightly different situation, which is we now report on the waits in the ambulances, but we will not offload an ambulance if we don't have a space in the emergency department anymore. So if there isn't a defined space in a corridor, and they're all taped out now for COVID distancing purposes, we will not offload an ambulance. And so within the sit rep, there is the how long have patients been waiting on ambulances, so that gets reported in 6 times a day at the same time.
And you will find an ambulance car will appear, and somebody with pips on their shoulder will walk in, want to know what's happening with their crews outside.
In Ireland, we're now recording how many ambulances are waiting to offload as well, because it's become a big problem, because you can't have anybody on a corridor.
No.
And if you haven't got the flow out, then you can't have flow in.
No.
Phone goes. Hello, this is ambulance control. I've got a 15-year-old male coming in, ETA 15 minutes. 1 hour ago, they were playing football, developed severe shortness of breath, collapsed to the floor. They also rolled their ankle. Known asthmatic, little bit tender to the ankle. They were unable to talk in sentences. Their rests are 28, SATs were 92. They've had salbutamol nebs and oxygen, which has now improved. We'll be there in about 14 minutes now.
Okay.
So what can we do?
We definitely need to move somebody out of resus now, because that, we've got peds. I wouldn't want to put him into the peds bay though, because he's an asthma attack. So I still would want to have him in a resus bay.
I know it's difficult to imagine without the patient in front of you. Absolutely right, yes. So look at the 2 options. So which is the option? Obviously resus would be your first line, but always have a plan A, always have a plan B, because your plan A plan might not come off to fruition. So you're absolutely right. Think about what else is available to me should that plan A not come off. So peds might be a second option until you can get that resus bed cleared. But primarily, you're right, resus, whether you can move that CT patient or not.
And it could be your peds patient that's in there is a peds injury, who is absolutely fine, and your one nurse is very capable nurse who can look after a sick patient in peds, but it's not a peds resus bed. So you do have to bear that in mind.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah,
sometimes when you get to eyeball the patient, that you make your final decision as to which location you're going to put them in, because some of them, as you know, they cope much better with high respiratory rates. I mean, if he's had these issues before, then he won't be as frightened. Whereas if it's his first time ever having such a severe attack, you've got a lot of anxiety there. So you probably would be looking more for a resus bay than a peds bay.
Where it's cold weather, if he's known asthma, he's been playing football, he hasn't been taking his pumps because he's a teenager and he doesn't like taking his pumps anymore. And he may have responded quite well with the treatment from the ambulance crew. So you don't know, you have to see what he's like when he arrives as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
And then if the other thing to think about is, and obviously it depends on how much space you've got, is whether you double up in resus. because they are critically ill. So, or you set a recess step down, like HDU type area in peds. So it all depends on your floor space and your kit, whether you double up in recess or whether you set it up in peds. And you'd need the team.
And you could be told that your Cat 1 99-year-old patient has now got a red form.
Okay.
So that could be somebody you could move out depending on what was happening with that patient. So if that's now become an end-of-life patient, then you could have a quieter area in majors for that patient.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I'd look into moving them out and then chase for maybe a side room for that patient.
With the longest wait for the triage, when we go to the huddle as well, just have a plan for that. It may be that the staff have been to break and that's where it's picked the triage time, and a few have arrived all at once. So that's, if the staff member's coming back from break, that'll, you'll be able to get back on track quite quickly.
Yeah. And it might be that you could move one of the healthcares to do obs and triage, so the triage nurse has got a bit more speed as well to get on top of things.
Yeah.
It's all about juggling, unfortunately, and firefighting a lot as a nurse in charge to look at the issue that's happening now and then move on to the next one.
It's the scanning role. Look, so because you've got like a helicopter view of the whole department, and it's just trying to keep an eye that everybody's safe and all the different areas are moving. It is like the busier the department gets, the more challenging it becomes, and you rely on your leads in each area to keep you up.
But you're not on your own. You've got help. You've got the site management team that will support you, and you can go to them and make things their problem that they've got to solve. They've got to make capacity in the hospital for you.
Yeah,
okay.
And for the clinical decision making, don't forget you've got the consultant and the registrar there to help you.
Okay. The phone goes again. Hello, this is the police again, following on from our previous conversation. I just want to find out if there's been any update on the RTC. It's really, really important that you contact us as soon as somebody with this description arrives. As you said before, you've got a duty to inform us.
Okay, so I just reiterate what was just previously been said, so that you can't give any much information out, but you can sort of give the name and the address of the person that you believe to be in the car accident, and any further information that's needed to escalate to the inspector.
Happy days. I keep clicking on that too early and then the phone rings. Okay, how was your session in charge?
Good, yeah.
Well done.
Fab. Okay, who wants to take over? Or you could keep going yourself if you want.
I don't mind.
Okay, let's continue then if you're happy to keep going. So it is coming up to the next huddle. So we're coming up to 9, 11, 1 o'clock. So we're coming up to lunchtime. So 1 o'clock lunchtime, what sort of things do you think we need to be thinking about?
I would, the usual then, so the state of the department, the bed numbers, if the flow is still moving, if we've moved our patients, if the staff have all started to have breaks, if there's any issues in terms of the doctors as well in keeping up patients.
Yeah. So when you're number crunching, just remember there's patients at the end of this. So what's your clinical priorities? Where's your vulnerable patients?
Yeah.
And it's not just the staff that need to eat, so make sure that the patients are being fed and washed as well if they've been there for a long period
Yeah,
of time.
yeah. Fundamentals are key. Yeah.
One of the other things that in between your 2-hour stops for meetings and various other things is, as you're going around the department, have a look at documentation, make sure that your staff are okay and they're being supported and that they're filling things out properly.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got somebody who's not sure of the departments, if you've got your agency nurse and majors who's not sure of how things function here, just make sure that they're filling out the documentation that they need to, because they might not be overly familiar with it.
Yeah.
So at 1 o'clock, you've cleared recess, but majors is full.
Okay.
And we've got 4 waiting to be seen in there. We have got 2 in peds, so peds is full. Our 15-year-old went in there. 1 in minors, and we've got a few in the waiting room. 2 have been referred to surgery in majors, and we've still got this 27-year-old waiting for transport in majors. You happy with the state of your department? Does it feel safe?
I would like some more moves now. I'd be chasing for some sort of flow, some sort of movement, because we are still low on numbers. I know we've got the 2 recess bays, but majors is full, and that's where we're trying to keep the flow unless we need the recess spaces.
That gives you a little bit of a picture. You've got 1 ambulance outside waiting to offload at the moment. Longest wait to be seen is 1 hour and 12. Our longest wait for triage is just over 1 hour. The waiting room is filling up a little bit. And our longest length of stay is gone over 4 hours now. It's that young boy that we need to get home. And we've got some waiting for surgical beds, 1 in minors waiting for an orthopedic bed, and 1 in peds waiting to go for a pediatric bed. But we've got an empty recess. So what could we do? Would you be happy to clear this ambulance and offload them into recess and fill a recess space with a non-recess patient?
The issue is that there's an hour wait on the triage in the waiting room, and I don't really know who's out in the waiting room as well, if with the triage wait that long. As well as not knowing on the ambulance, I think I'd need to know what was going on before offloading.
Yeah. So you want to start making a plan to get that waiting time down.
Yeah.
Redeploy your team.
The band 7 from recess is now potentially free, so he could come and help with triaging.
Yeah.
To narrow down the times. And I don't know how this minors bay is, but we could potentially spill over into there as well if there is well enough patients. I know we've done that in the past.
So there's only 3 clinicians here. There's no E&P, there's an ACP and 2 doctors. So there's minors is only staffed by a healthcare.
Okay, yeah, not appropriate then.
So
okay.
you need to think about the acuity of what goes into minors.
Yeah. Sorry, my mistake. I thought there was a nurse in there, but yeah, I remember now, healthcare.
But if you had more staff, then yeah, potentially. But if you start filling up the minor spaces, then you run out of spaces to see your ambulatory patients.
Especially if he then gets pulled to recess and then we filled the minors as well, and there's no man in there.
The other conversation you might want to have, Jess, is that you've got 1 waiting for transport and you've got 1 outside.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but that's not for us to decide. That's for the ambulance service to decide. But you can plant that seed and have that conversation with the ambulance liaison officer that's on site.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they will help you out and do that because they don't want to be stuck there.
Yeah.
That works okay if your ambulance is delivering patients to you are also the ones that take them away from you. Ours aren't. It works okay if it's a transfer. So, you know, with your boy here, if he was going to a tertiary centre and he needed a paramedic level ambulance to take him there, that would work. If he's going back home, won't work in England. We have patient transport of varying levels that would be contracted to do that, not the ambulance service.
Interesting. Would that be similar in Ireland?
It's next to impossible to get an ambulance home, full stop, unless you're going to a nursing home. Even then, they can waiting hours, or, you know, if they are full care. But other than that, not a hope.
Okay.
We do,
really-
so we run Red Cross as well. So if this was my department, I could probably look into utilising to see whether that patient could be transferred home with Red Cross as well, rather than an ambulance.
Yeah, we do that too. So that's a very good idea. Really good idea. Ask the rest of Red.
Well done. Okay, the phone rings. Hello, my name's Owen. I'm calling from the local Gazette. Can you confirm for me if TV icon Maddie Sullivan came into the department last night and was refused care by your department?
I would say that we are an emergency department and we don't give any personal information out at all to the public.
So you're not denying this then?
I'm not denying or confirming we don't give any information out about any patients.
I find it absolutely shocking that our publicly funded health service would treat anyone in this manner and refuse them care, especially somebody as well known as Maddie Sullivan. Can you make a statement for the press?
No, I cannot make any statements. I cannot give any information out about the department or any patients that may or may not have come through the department. And this is not appropriate.
That's it. Well, there's a comms team, Jess, that you could refer them to.
Yeah.
So again, you know, thank you for your inquiry, being polite, being professional. And if you need any media related questions, I would redirect and please contact the comms team, who will be more than happy to assist you.
And to be honest, this is a journalist who should flipping well know that there's a comms team. So it's very, very cheeky of a journalist to ring the emergency department. And you could, whilst being extremely polite, just remind them. Were you unable to get an answer from our comms team when you rang them?
I have had them
as you have the number. As you have the number, perhaps you'd like to try it again.
Because they will chance their luck.
Yeah. When I was in Newport, the local rag was just across the road and they'd be standing up at the top of the hill taking photographs of the ambulance bay, and they would show up sometimes. You might get random stuff in the waiting room. You just need to be careful.
Or the BBC News put a speaker in your face as you go round the corner.
Oh gosh.
Really? You expect better standards from the BBC, don't you? Which would be my response to that one. Oh, I thought you had higher standards than this.
Fab, well done. Phone rings again, and it's a little bit hazy. Hello, this is John. I'm the locum reg supposed to be coming in tonight. I'm stuck on the Isle of Wight and I've missed the ferry and there isn't another one today. I'm not going to make tonight's shift. I'm really, really sorry.
Okay. Okay, I would take a contact number for him as well if we already hadn't got it, jot his details down, and I would go and escalate this with the consultant site prac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same as the nurses, there's a process to follow. They shouldn't be contacting you necessarily. But if they haven't been able to get through to the medical staff in person, you are the default. So it is important that you get notified.
Especially out of hours, so at night or at the weekend, you might get more chance of a phone call coming through rather than in hours when they would have a direct contact with someone from staffing. But this is a small department that on the day shift is running with a reg, an SHO, and an ACP. So tonight, you're only going to have 2 in.
So we need to escalate this as early as possible so that they can form some sort of plan.
Yeah. Yeah, and the medical staffing team, they're on call the same as the nurse, have a resource bank and agencies, so they'll access that and do similar to what the nurses do with agency and locums if they need to, if they can fill it.
And failing that, the on-call consultant for the weekend might have to work this
Yeah,
weekend.
yeah, that's what I was just about to suggest.
It's not for you to stress about the medical staffing. There's people that look after that. You've done your bit by informing them. And yes, obviously, as nurse in charge, you need to be aware that there's going to be a deficit because you have to hand it over. But, you know, it's not a burden to come to your shoulders. It's to go to someone else's.
Yeah. That this is something that you may get a regular thing around staffing, be it nursing or admin staff or medical staff, that you will have last minute shortages.
Yeah.
That's something we'll have to be sorted out for. At least you're getting a decent amount of notice. This is 1 in the afternoon and they're not coming in till 7 o'clock tonight. So you've got a few hours hopefully to get this sorted. Okay, Fiona.
John, I've got to talk to you very urgently. I've made a mistake. I'm only just on the register. It looks like I'm going to be chucked off because I've made a medical error, drug error. So what I've done is I've given paracetamol 1 gram to a patient. I did check that they weren't allergic to it, but I didn't check how much they'd taken today. And they've actually already taken 5 doses. So I've actually overdosed them.
Okay, so first point of call would be checking the patient, making sure that they're okay. We do have a duty of candor, so we've got to sort of tell them what's happened whilst escalating to the doctor to check the patient. So that the patient's informed, the doctor's informed, you're doing the observations, making sure that they're stable. It needs to be reported in terms of Dept. And then that will escalate a plan. I think that this, a reflection and a form to do on drug errors, isn't there? Like
Yeah.
the nurse, yeah.
So, yeah, it depends on which hospital you work in. So for us, Jess,
Yeah.
was the best reporting.
I didn't catch that then, sorry.
Best Finan scoring, BESS.
Yeah, so obviously escalate that, but also the nurse appears a bit distressed as well, so comfort the nurse as well, because it is quite distressing making a drug error. So make sure everyone's okay, really.
And Fiona's newly qualified.
Oh, is she? Oh, bless her. So yeah, go through the whole process and sort of tell her that this is what will be happening. We will escalate it, but we will make sure the patient is okay. And if the patient lack capacity, you may need to inform their family members as well, so that everyone's aware.
Do you use, sorry, the best scoring I haven't heard of, would either the clinical facilitator with the nurse manager for the area or practice development get involved with doing an action plan to support the nurse? So you have the open disclosure that looks after the patient, but do you have, would it be practice development then would help with the action plan for the nurse to help them regain their confidence and to prevent a similar error occurring again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's like a reflection form, isn't it? There's like a reflection form, and then you've got to get witnessed again. Administering medication, is that right, Dan?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
competence assessment.
Depending on the severity and the score, you get a low, medium or high score. Anything low doesn't stop you from continuing to administer drugs. A low score will stay on your file for up to 1 year, and you need to notify the person that you're having that conversation with. It's all confidential as well. And you use the best paperwork, which gives you a score, and it looks at the type of drug, because obviously different drugs have got different risks. Insulins, potassium, things like that are obviously going to be high risk. So there's a point for each type of drug. There's a point for whether it was given orally or IM or IV. There's points for the time of recognition of the error. So every hour, the points go up higher. And then the clinical injury, if there is any, to the patient. So it'll there's 5 scores altogether, and then that'll give you your final score then of a low, medium or high. If it's a medium or high, you need to be thinking about whether there's any capability issues. And as part of the paperwork, there's a reflective discussion form. Now, sometimes on the really low scores, you can have that verbal professional discussion. On something a bit higher and a bit more risky, you may want to have that professional discussion, but follow it up with a written reflection, as you would use for your NMC, for example. And that you might want to put some action plans in, like redoing one part of the medicines administration online, or revising some kind of pathway like the heparin pathway or the diabetic pathway, depending on what the learning is, because it's good to recognise that they've reported it, and that's good. That's not that you want them to have drug errors. It's very rare that it happens. And quite rightly that it's distressing, and you've recognised that to look after your staff member as well. But once you've sorted the patient out, the staff are supported, so they have time out. Sometimes the nurse in charge or the lead in that area can do the best reporting paperwork during the shift. It just depends on how busy it is. So ideally you want it done that day or the day after, but sometimes if the shifts are really busy or they're short staffed, the practice educator or the band 7 or the team leader will follow it up.
Yeah, can I add that if I was looking at this one to investigate, I'd be putting a human factors lens on and saying what else was going on for that nurse at the time. Why were they so distracted? Were they trying to do 5 things at the same time and doing none of them well? Was the patient being particularly demanding? And that can happen, that there's one or more patients that are being really, really demanding and saying, do this, do this, do this. And it kind of frightens you, particularly when you're newly qualified, into just doing what they ask instead of stepping back and thinking about it. So that's just a completely human thing to do, that, if someone really gets it, you get it. It takes quite a lot of maturity actually to be able to go, no, actually, sir, no, we're just going to stop and think about this. Give me 2 seconds just to get my head clear. Now this is what we're going to do. And that's really hard to do when you're 22, 23 and newly qualified, particularly. So just thinking about what else is going on, and has that nurse had a break recently, and is there anything going on in their life that's upsetting them? Did mum die yesterday and they haven't told you, or something, something like that that's really thrown them off kilter.
And they're going to be more distressed now after this.
Yeah, how are they going to cope? Bless them.
The whole aim is to manage the situation so that we don't, one, lose somebody to nursing or to emergency nursing. If it's handled in the right way, it becomes quite a learning experience, not just for that particular nurse, but for many nurses on the shift, because they can happen so easily, especially now there are so many drugs and with such similar names. It's very easy.
All the packets that look the same.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Has anyone heard of tall man lettering?
No.
This is something that doctors can do when prescribing drugs. So drugs that have similar names, where the lettering is very, very similar, if they use different lettering. So instead of printing it all out capitals or starting the word with a capital, if they just put capitals in odd places in the word. So for example, verapamil and vecuronium, very, very similar. We had a drug error with that one because they happened to be next to each other in the cupboard, but they're not now. But if you put, instead of putting the capital V at the beginning, this is something the prescriber has to do. This is not a nurse issue. This is a prescriber issue. But if you put the odd letter as the capital, so with my example, verapamil is VER, vecuronium is VEC. So if you, instead of putting the capital on the V, put it on the C and the R, it really makes it stand out for the person reading it. And they go, hang on, what's that? And it really makes them read instead of just glance over it and think they know what they're picking up off the shelf.
I might start doing that as a prescriber. I like.
Well, there we go. What did you learn from tonight's session?
Tall man lettering.
Yeah, it's called tall man lettering.
Like
you can do it with adrenaline. I've seen it done with adrenaline where you put a big D because adrenaline and atropine are very similar when you write them out. So if you put AD lowercase and then atropine, no, A lowercase and then uppercase D for adrenaline, and then with atropine you put lowercase a and uppercase T. And people just kind of go, you are. It makes them think. It makes them double check more carefully.
I like that. I'm used to people thinking I'm crazy, so I might start doing that.
You never know. This might have been a seed that spreads throughout Wales at this rate. And Ireland. Well, who else prescribes apart from you, John? So it's you that's going to have to start the movement.
Okay, fab. Well done. The only other thing that you might find with a drug error, generally, anyone I've encountered who's made a drug error has been very open, very honest about it, very, oh my God, what have I just done? There might be a rare occasion where you might find somebody is not as open and not as honest. So that is something to bear in mind and think about, but I've not encountered that, fortunately.
Sometimes they just need to go away and think about it. I've in all the years I've been doing it, I've only ever had one person, and I think they just didn't seem to take on board. They were deflecting. It was everybody else's fault and not their own. But a few days they went away. I gave them the information and asked them to come back, and I followed it up. And they were very different the second conversation. I think sometimes some people, they go into defense mode, and need that time out. So sometimes you're managing that personality as well.
I guess it's part of their fight or flight response.
Yeah.
Fab. Well done. Are you happy with that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Shall we have someone else take over? Does anyone want to take charge?
Kira or Chris, do you want to give it a go? This is the place to try it out before you're.
It's a safe space.
It's safe space. This is the place to step forward and give it a go before you really have to do it for real.
No butter.
And Chris is well able, having been a manager for a short few months last year.
Yeah.
Okay, fab. We're going to get ready for our next huddle then. So I think we're coming up to the 3 o'clock huddle. So 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So what are we going to do?
So for the 3 o'clock huddle, I'm just gonna run through once again with our bed capacity. How many patients are awaiting medical or surgical or whatever referral? And then patient flow, how many people are still waiting to be triaged, length of stay, patient safety issues of the entire department, how overcrowded we are or whatnot, um, and ensure that everyone already have taken their breaks, including myself, hopefully.
Fab.
That-
Don't forget yourself. The nurse in charge needs to have a break. It's very easy to be the martyr and make sure that everyone has gone to break before you. And then at 6 o'clock in the evening, you haven't drunk since 6 a.m. You haven't weed for hours. You haven't eaten. You need to look after yourself as well. So when resus was empty, giving the band 7 and resus the bleep so you can go. Fab, they won't have a problem with that. So this is the state at the moment. Peds is empty. You've got empty trolleys everywhere. You've got one patient in resus. They are quite unwell. They're a Cat 1, they're news of 12. They've only been here 10 minutes, but ITU was already involved and they're going to be admitted. We've got 4 patients in majors, but they've all been seen. They're all medical patients. They're all waiting for post-tick ward round. And coming down into minors, well, minors is full. We've got a Cat 1 in minors. What could be a Cat 1 in minors?
Probably there could be a limb injury that it's life-threatening.
I'd hope that isn't still in minors. The only Cat
Hello,
1 I would
sorry,
hope to see
the
in minors-
internet is a bit stable. I can't hear you.
Sorry. So I would hope that the only Cat 1 that is sitting in minors is a chemical eye injury. Any other Cat 1, if it's a critical limb, I would hope is outside of minors, hopefully in resus. Might have a couple of Cat 2s if they're dislocations, but the only Cat 1 I'd want in there is chemical eye who's having a washout. Which this possibly is because they've been seen quite quickly. And there's a Cat 2 in there. Could be a painful dislocation, but their obs are fine. They're news of 0. And there's another Cat 4. They've all been seen relatively quickly. The waiting room, however, there's 2 triaged and a bunch not, including D. Morgan, who's 101 and has been there half an hour.
And
this is our department. Is it safe?
For the space wise, we have adequate space for the department. However, I will be alarmed with the patient awaiting to be seen in triage, as well as the elderly person in the waiting room. So as a nurse in charge, if I could relocate some of this nurses who are capable of doing the triage, or if I'm free, I'm willing to cover and take and have a go and inspect what's going on in triage, and probably get Mr. G. Morgan and bring into the majors or quickly assess the patient. Otherwise, I could also streamline, once the patient has been triaged, I could streamline and utilize some of our ANPs if they're also available. That's to make things quicker as well.
So if you look at your patients, the patient in resus, they're sick, but ITU has taken over. The patients in majors, they're all medical patients waiting for beds. So everyone's been seen. Do all your patients need to be triaged? Could they just be picked up straight away and seen without triage to try and speed things up? So that's another thing you could think about.
I'm sorry, sir?
So one of the things you could think about is, do all your patients need to be triaged? If there's clinicians around, can they just start seeing people without triage? Yes, we've got a long wait for one who's been there an hour, but we've got 3 clinicians, so they could start bouncing through some of these ones in the waiting room.
I'm not pretty sure with this answer, but normally with our process, everyone who comes in needs to be triaged accordingly. and then seen by the physician.
Okay.
Although there were some instances that consultants also pick patients who's waiting to be triaged and retrospect thereafter.
That's it.
The triage is designed to manage where demand exceeds resources. So in this case, you've got more resources than you have demand. So it is, very logical to pull some of those and get them seen directly by the medic, by the doc or the ACP, and bypass triage. That is already done in some sites in Ireland, predominantly more with related to the minor streams, where the AMP just takes them straight from waiting room without ever triaging. But triage, like you'll just make, if you, those patients essentially, if you wait for them to triage before they're seen by the doctors who've actually got nobody to see, you're making them wait unnecessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
I'd be, especially that 101-year-old, I'd be pulling them out and getting,
Yeah.
You could pull them straight into a trolley and let one of the nurses and majors triage them, because you've got empty
exactly.
Yeah.
They'll divvy up the load.
trolleys. I wouldn't be happy with a 101-year-old who's been sat outside for a while.
I agree
But
as well.
at the same time, easily the 21-year-old could be somebody who's quite sick. We don't know. So triage is one of the areas that I want to make sure is sorted, because that's where some of your biggest risk is at times. And this is our little map. So we've got one in resus, but they're going to go up to ITU. They're just being sorted. We've got empty peds. There's an ambulance just pulling up, so they should be able to be offloaded pretty quickly. But yeah, I would be thinking about if we can juggle staff around. Peds is empty, so the peds nurse could be helping out with triage as well.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time of the day, as you mentioned, making sure everyone's had break, including yourself. There's been studies around breaks as well, and there's been things around if people haven't had breaks, then they get hangry, so they get hungry and angry and they can snap. And there's lots of stuff around civility saves lives, so making sure that people are fed and watered will help to keep them civil as well and reduce stress in the department. So look after your staff as well as your patients, and look after yourself.
And can I say I learned the hard way that actually the best way of making sure everyone goes for a break is for you to go first. If the person in charge goes first, it gives tacit permission to everybody else to go. And so actually go first and pick your break to go early. So you know when patients are likely to, you know perfectly well when patients are likely to turn up in the department and when moves are likely to happen. So make sure you go to break before moves are starting to happen. So don't think, well, it's not lunchtime yet or it's not tea time yet. Go early, eat, and then you're on it, and you'll be back in place for the majority of the moves.
It is so easy to leave yourself till last.
Yeah, it really is.
We've all done it.
Everybody does it, but it's the categorically one easiest thing to do to make sure you're on it and your staff go to break as well, is to put yourself down first. It looks selfish, and that's why none of us do it, but honestly, just do it.
The other side of the coin is, you look after your staff, they will look after you. Yeah. And they'll enjoy working with you.
All our majors patients are waiting for post-take ward run before they can go to a bed. That's something you can escalate. So that can sort out some stuff in A&E for you to get them out. So I'll be escalating that to site to help you. Okay. The phone rings. Hello, I'm calling from Deluxe, the new agency. We're looking to recruit some nursing staff to our agency. We've got some really competitive rates. I was wondering if you or any of your staff would be interested in joining us.
That's kind of odd. I'm just gonna. I would like to say that although I appreciate the call, but I would say this is an emergency department that we are catering to to patient care rather than entertaining their call, I would redirect them to probably um, nursing admin for or the site manager to sort to so that we could get more agency staff nurses. Am I getting the right question here? Sorry now.
You will get lots of random weird phone calls,
Yeah.
especially the pre-alert phone. I have had banks ring the pre-alert phone, PPI phone calls ring our pre-alert red phone, all sorts of weird and wonderful things.
Chris, have you not answered the green phone yet when they're looking for the local carpet shop? Because in
No,
the number's near enough the same as the emergency phone in the department.
actually, I was taken aback with these calls. That's why I don't know. I haven't received any call as such.
If it's on the bat phone, really, I mean, the only people who should have the bat phone are your ambulance service. Nobody else should be able to access that number. So they've just, dear knows how they've got hold of that number.
I always wonder how they've got the number.
Generally speaking, it's a misdial where they've dialed the digit that is part of the bat phone number.
One day you'll answer, it'll be somebody looking for a takeaway.
However, you can say, I'm sorry, this is the emergency phone, and I'm going to have to put the line down immediately because you're not an emergency. You can say that one.
Emma and Fiona.
Hello.
Fiona, you're...
Yeah, I'm going to elevate this lady's foot on some blankets because I see that her ankle is red. I'll just go and get my blankets.
Hello?
So,
Hello?
Yeah, sorry, really, for the internet connection. It's really shaky at the moment. Hello?
hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Fiona's just described as a nurse, she's going to get some blankets to put a lady's leg up for some pressure comfort. And I'm the student nurse assisting her. And I've gone to go and fill a glove full of water to use that as a cushion, as a balloon effect.
Well, I am the registered nurse here, so I think we should go with my suggestion.
Well, I'm sorry, but you're only an agency nurse and I'm the student nurse, and I've worked on a care of the elderly ward, and that's what they did on the last one. So why is it not good enough to do here?
Well, I would be concerned about the glove either bursting, and from an infection control perspective, that we're putting the lady's leg up on a glove as opposed to a fresh blanket.
I thought it was a really good idea, and I wouldn't use cold water, I would warm the water so it was warm and comfortable for the patient, and surely something is better than nothing.
Exactly, so that's why we're going to go with the blankets. At the end of the day, I'm the registered nurse, and you are under my direction, so it's my registration that we're working on, not yours.
Okay. All right, I'll take this back to the university and I'll want to look at the research and the evidence-based practice.
As nurse in charge, is there anything you want to do about this?
I don't know what happened to the 3 o'clock shift now. There are a lot of things going on. So I would like to diffuse the situation. I would say there's a friction between my my staff along with my student nurse, and talk to them about the issues ongoing. And then I would make a suggestion what is best for the patient. And in relation to addressing the concern of the student nurse, will if I get a chance, I could refer her to the guidelines or the best practice that she could read through, and a point of learning experience on her. And um, anything else that you could add on? Hello?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think that sounds all right. So conflict is one of the things that you might encounter on your shift, especially if you've had some big personalities which will get attracted to the emergency department. You might find some conflict between various aspects of care for the patient. You might find conflict around stuff that's happening outside of work and other things. It's all about being professional and how you deal with the two members of staff. If you need to take them away, have a chat with them individually, have a chat with them together, find out what's going on, see if you need to move somebody to work in a different area so they're not together for the rest of the shift. Lots of different things you might need to look at. Have you ever seen a glove filled with water for a pressure sore?
It used to be used, but I wouldn't have seen it used in the last 10 years.
No.
Maybe more.
I've only seen it once. And
I think the evidence base for that is non-existent.
It was a very weird thing, I thought, when I saw it.
I want to know what's wrong with a decent repose mattress.
Well, you'd be doing this while you wait for the mattress to arrive.
Absolutely. I'm not using the glove.
No.
Other things you might want to be aware of as a nurse in charge: if you do have a patient who has got a pressure sore, when you come in, there's going to be various things that you might want to follow to make sure it's documented. Depending on your local policies, you might need to do a day text for certain levels of pressure sore that has come in. So making sure that your patient is being cared for appropriately, and if they need to move on to a bed rather than a trolley in the emergency department, then that's acceptable too in some places.
We have to fill out incident forms for anybody who comes in, so it's all documented what they've come in with, as especially if they're from nursing homes. Sometimes they decide they don't want to take them back if they've got a pressure or if they've got MRSA. So there's all this screening goes on of all the long-term care patients.
Clinical photography is your friend, because they can take a photo of the arrival. Okay, well done. You happy with them? Management of your conflict, girls? Are you okay to work together again?
Yeah, we'll manage till the end of the shift anyway.
And it may be that when you speak to the mentors, this student's been a dream all the way through all the other aspects, or it might be that she's been really confrontational all the way through. So there might be something to take forward with through the mentor. There may or may not be.
And it might be that the student has been a dream when they've been with their mentor, and a bit different when they've been with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they know the mentors marking their assessment for their placement.
Okay, are you happy with that?
Yes.
Well done. Do you want to keep taking charge? Does somebody else want to take over?
I'm happy to go ahead and finish the shift, perhaps.
Okay, let's continue.
Well done.
That was fab. We are coming up to our next huddle. So we're coming up to 5 o'clock. We're nearly there. It's the last push towards the end of the shift.
Yeah.
So same thing. You want to get your information about what's going on. Make sure your staff are okay. Make sure your department is okay. So we have got 2 in recess. So that ITU patient is still in recess. Turns out there wasn't an ITU bed ready. The orange patient that was in minors is now in recess, and TNO have seen them and they're waiting for a theatre bed. Majors, well, a lot of those medical patients have moved. The 101-year-old is now in majors and is waiting for surgeons to come to see them. There is a married couple in bed 6 and 7 that have arrived that are waiting to be seen. There's a cat 2 in peds with a news of 9 that's waiting to be seen, but they've only been there 10 minutes. And we've got a few waiting for triage in the waiting room.
So my biggest concern again is the long waiting time of the rhesus patient. So I'm gonna follow up the ITU if the bed is ready. Otherwise, I would escalate the situation in the site manager about our situation. In relation to the majors, I'm well, the waiting cat 2 patients has to be seen since it's 5 o'clock. So major 6 A Dublin should be seen by one of their regis available or doctors available, which I need to follow up. And so with the 7. On the other note, majors 1 and 3. So referral to medics. So it's already 5 o'clock. I would like to follow up what's the update of these patients, whether they are seen surgically or medically, and if they are already admitted or there's a decision for admission, I would inform the site manager. For the peds, this is also a top priority as the new score is 9. And I wonder if the patient has been seen by the doctors and is there any attending nurses as well on site. And
They've
for
only been here 10 minutes, but they are quite sick and they haven't been seen.
Yeah, it's a bit alarming. And for the waiting room, also we still need to keep up in relation to the management of the triage.
That longest one's an hour.
That
That
it's a
21-year-old
1
has
hour.
been here an hour.
And yeah, since I'm down with one rhesus nurse, I might allocate a capable perhaps if we have enough staff nurses in attending the majors, I would reallocate one nurse who's capable of doing triage in the waiting room. Otherwise, if I'm free, I'm happy to take or cover the triage as well, just to keep up.
Fab. Jen, the healthcare has just come up to you. Oh, stop ringing. It wasn't supposed to ring. Jen, the healthcare has just come up to you and has said that I've just been on break with Anne, the agency nurse, and I saw she was drinking a Bacardi Breezer. I didn't know what to say, but yeah, it didn't look right to me, and I think you need to know as nurse in charge.
The healthcare attendant that come over to me. I'm sorry.
Yes, healthcare has come over to you and said she was on break with Anne, the agency nurse, and in the break room, Anne was drinking a Bacardi Breezer.
Drinking
an alcohol drink, Alcopops, Bacardi Breezer.
It's an alcohol pop, Chris. So it's alcohol and a fruit juice.
Oh, okay.
And Jen, she was stunned, didn't know what to say, but she thought she should tell you as nurse in charge.
Yeah, I need to address this situation immediately and have a quick chat with the nurse involved in relation to drinking, as this would greatly affect the patient.
I'm the agency nurse, so I'm going to play the part of the agency nurse.
Yeah.
So what do you want to? So I'm working on the floor, looking after a patient.
Yeah. It has come to my attention that there is it's come to my attention that you drinking is an alcohol, isn't it?
No, I certainly wasn't doing that. All I've been is to break. You've got party food in the staff room. I know there's no way I would do that. No way at all.
Yeah, it seems that the way I observe you and the way you speak to me at the moment, it seems that you can't go back to our you can't go back to the majors again just because it seems like you're a bit intoxicated. So I would prefer that you better off take your break and go off duty already. Is that
Okay. So I've just been to break, and in the staff room were
Mhm.
drinks and party food, and all I've had is one of the pop bottles that were in there. I'm not aware that there's alcohol in there, and I'm
Mhm.
planning on driving home. So I'm not aware that there's alcohol in this bottle, and I don't feel intoxicated at all. I'm quite happy to carry on working my shift.
Yeah, I think as we want to make it sure the safety of the entire the safety of the department, I would like you to have your break, just have a drink of water, take your time. If there's anyone that could collect you to go home, and I would suggest that would be the best option for for each and every one of us.
Okay. Shall we go in the staff room then and have a look at this bottle to see if there's alcohol actually in there, in the
Yeah,
content? Yeah.
yeah. Let's confirm if there's
Yeah.
any alcohol in the staff room.
All right. So we've gone into the staff room, and you're quite right. The healthcare support worker is right. There is it's supposed to be a low alcohol bottle, but there is alcohol in there. So I am now mortified. So I'm really upset. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It was there, it was party food. I never in a million years would have done that. Oh my God, I'm worried about my PIN. I'm worried about the NMC. Will I lose my professional body registration? I'm so mortified. Why was it here? Who brought it in? Why have they done this to me? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Not to, while it's not your fault, Emma, I do understand that you're upset on um I do understand that you're upset. If you want to have just to have your break, continue your break at the moment and just try to calm yourself down, I'm glad I would be giving you the space to do so. And we'll just, I think, what else will I that's it.
Okay. Yeah.
Who else did you inform, Chris, of the
Um,
incident?
I'm also going to inform the site manager in relation to
Good.
this, and that's it. Who else?
Would you let me back on the shop floor?
I'm sorry.
Would you let me carry on my shift?
No, I won't let you carry on your shift, Emma.
Yeah, that's correct.
Would you
And
inform
then
the agency?
I have to inform the agency, the site manager, and also inform that we might be needing another nurse to cover the remaining hours of the shift.
What about the party food in the staff room?
Sorry.
There's party food and drinks in the staff room.
So
So what would you do with that?
I will keep that away as well, just to prevent another reoccurrence of such.
Fab?
Will you phone the agency, or will you leave the site managers to phone the agency?
I will leave it to the site manager.
Yeah, escalated.
Would you document it anywhere? Would you do an instant form?
The NIRF form has to be filled in, or the incident report have to be filled in as well.
Fantastic. And the site manager tells you they have found a spare nurse on one of the wards. Day surgery is closed, so they're sending a nurse down to help. So you're not going to be short-staffed for the last few hours.
Oh, fabulous.
Well done. Okay, so we go back to our huddle. This is the state of our department, just so you're aware. There's 3 ambulances have arrived, but you've got some offload space. Recess is full, which you know about, and we know about the waiting room. Well done. Are you happy with that?
Yeah. I hope
You
that won't
happy with
happen.
how this went down?
I won't happen. It won't happen to my ship. I hope.
It doesn't matter if it does, because you know what to do now.
Yeah. Thanks,
So
Emil.
just out of interest, Chris, what would you do for his medical staff? Because I haven't had a nurse turn up smelling a drink, but I've had medical staff turn up smelling a drink.
The
Me
medic.
too.
I'm sorry.
If it was a doctor rather than a nurse, what would you do? Who smelling a drink?
I have also to speak to the doctors involved that it has also come to my attention that there's a drink involved in the staff room, and that I would also speak whatever I've observed in relation to the behavior and the safety concern of the department. If the medical doctor is still adamant to go to duty, I have to escalate it to the senior doctor on board. Otherwise, escalate it as well to the consultant.
Yeah, escalate to the consultant.
Yeah.
Skip the I wouldn't go with the next
consultant
senior.
at home.
I go right away to the consultant on call.
Mm-hmm.
Consultant would have to come in and get involved.
Yep, yep.
Watch doctors arriving the morning after the night before as well. That's where I've got caught out before. Doctors arriving
That's
well
the
over
I have.
the legal alcohol limit
Mm-hmm.
first thing in the
Yeah.
morning because they'd had a night
December after the Christmas party.
My case was a day after Stephen's Day where they'd been on the Raz all day. So, watch that.
Okay. Do you want to keep going? Do you want to swap to somebody else for the last little bit?
If there's any takers, but I'm still happy to go
There
on if
isn't
you
really
want.
much more we're going to do. So let's plow through. We're coming up to 7 o'clock. It's the end of the shift. So this is the state of the department. There is an unknown patient in resus, has been in for 5 minutes. Cat 1, news of 20. They're being seen at the moment by pretty much everybody. That orthopedic patient waiting for theatre, has been here 5 hours, is still in resus. We've got a full majors. Minors is empty, but that's because there's no clinician in there to see anybody, and the healthcare has come in to help in resus with the unknown patient. Peds is full. That sick patient from earlier has been referred to Peds and is waiting for a Peds bed. And we have got a waiting room that is quite busy.
So,
and this is 7 o'clock now, so you're getting ready to go home, but this is the state of your department.
yeah. So first of my priority list is the resus, as just want to make it sure that the unknown patient has been being attended already. And then is there any way that I could find out like the next of kin or any means for me to know what's the name of the patient and get his or her identity? And then for the resus 2, I would also follow up the theater if they're ready for transfer. On the other note, I'm pretty happy so far with majors. However, my concern is the lack of space. So I would do follow up the medics and as well as surgical, what of the status, whether it's that they are going to be admitting the patient or otherwise, and ring the site manager if we have a bed available for the transfers of these patients. On the waiting room, I'm pretty concerned about the waiting time as well, especially the 95-year-old waiting to be seen for more than hours. So
hour and a half.
An hour and a half. Yeah. If there is a chance that we could keep up as well with the triage and hopefully
You've got
none
a
of
1-year-old out there as well waiting for
and
triage.
yeah, 1-year-old person, if I could cover and quickly assess these patients and attend to them, triage them immediately, I would cover them. Like pretty I would say that the entire department is nearly overcrowded, if I may say. So the longest waiting time is a bit, the length of stay is a bit concerning. So I would escalate again to the site manager about our situation so that there would be movement in and space in our department.
We've got a full ambulance bay as well. One of those is the patient who's just arrived in Teresa's. They're cleaning down the ambulance to go out, but you've got 3 crews waiting to offload. As the end of your shift now, the night staff are coming into a Saturday night in the department.
Yeah, for the ambulances, as we have the KPIs as well here in Ireland, if the patients are stable enough to wait in the waiting room, I can sign them off as well if it's safe enough. But otherwise, if the patients if the patient needs a trolley, if there's anyone in the majors that can be moved out, like and bring in and utilize some of the spaces like the corridors, I would do so just to accommodate the patients who badly need the trolley in majors. We also, with great consideration of the COVID status, the isolation status, I need to consider that as well. So I need to keep track of the social distancing and the infection control issues.
Does that waiting room look like they're socially distancing right now?
I hope I hope I could put up another waiting room on that aspect. And if there would be, if minors can be utilized, or are there patients waiting for minors, I could also designate them just to make it sure that the ED isn't crowded.
Fab. I like that you mentioned about the ambulances. Fit to sit is the term we use locally around here, but I'm sure there's other terms as well about looking at the ambulance patients. Do they actually need to be on trolleys? What were their observations like when they came in? Are they fit to sit in the waiting room? Minors, yes, if you've got the staff. So at the moment, all our clinicians are in resus with this unwell patient, and the healthcare from minors has been pulled into resus to help out as well. So there's no staff in minors, but the night staff are sitting in the staff room, enjoying a cup of coffee before they come out. So you could always see about putting some out and skip handover, which is a bit of a safety risk.
The other thing I'd be asking as well is that once the queue starts building with triage, asking about navigation and redirection, and other triage nurses using all the policies and pathways available to them.
Yeah, so think about, do they need to be in A&E? Can they go to primary care? Can they be seen by GP out of hours? Can any of your ambulances, to give you some headroom, be diverted to another hospital, which is something that site might be able to take on to look at you if you've got capacity issues, you're in high escalation.
That rarely happens in Ireland because our hospitals are so far apart. They occasionally tried in the Dublin sites, but like a majority of hospitals, you're looking at 25 miles plus apart.
Yeah, in a rural area, it's not going to happen, but if you're in a city area, then you might be lucky that there might be another A&E nearby.
The other thing you have to remember is, did they fill that shift for the escalation piece? Did they fill that shift for the medic that wasn't going to make the night shift?
Might be coming in 22 clinicians now tonight. Consultant needs to be coming in if they're not fully staffed. Okay, it's handover time. What are you going to hand over to? So what do you need to hand over to the night staff? What do they need to be aware of?
So for the handover, the overview of department, what would be what's our waiting length of stay, waiting time to be seen by the doctors, medics, or any referring departments, along with the patient safety issues, how many patients on board on the night shift, how many categories, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and how many ambulance are waiting to be checked, waiting to be signed off. what else? Yeah, basically it how is the ED overcrowding status, infection control issues or patient safety issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if there's any bed available shortly for transfers.
Some departments might have a structured handover form. If you've got that, then that's fantastic, because there'll be things on there just to remind you of things to hand over. So there might be things that will say, have you handed over the keys for the area?
Yeah.
Have you handed over the bleep? Has the cleaning been checked? Has there been any cardiac arrests? Has the arrest trolley been restocked? Has there been any
Yeah.
drug errors?
Mm.
Has there been any pressure area stuff that you need to be aware of, any incidents that have happened? So if you've got
Any
a structured
major-
thing, then that's useful.
Any major stock or equipment issues, and staffing plans for the next shift or for the next 24 hours.
Yeah, we are also utilizing SBAR as part of our handover from shift leader to shift leader. So, yeah.
Fabulous.
And then any special handover from the morning shift that needs to be addressed or needs to be relayed on the night shift.
Watch out in case the media call again.
Yeah.
Okay, you've made it to the end of the shift. Well done. How did that go?
Happy days.
So you start together and you finish together, and make a point of saying thank you to your team around you as you say goodbye and finish up with them, because that goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go around, check that everyone's okay, talk to your staff.
And make it sure they also had, but before anything else, they should have their tea break if they had the chance as well, I hope, in the middle of, sometimes 1700. And normally what I do as well is I always check them, update to get with them about the patient status and how are they feeling at the moment before the end of the shift as well.
Fab. Well done. So we've made it to the end of our session. There is a feedback form. There's a link on here, or you can scan the QR code, or we can email it out to you as well. If you can put some feedback form, that would be really, really useful. This is the first time we've done something like this. It's something I had been hoping to do as a face-to-face simulated session, but never really managed to because of COVID. But I would like to know what people thought of it, if it was useful, and if it's something that is worth doing more regularly. And if you do fill that out, then you will get a certificate as well.
Well done, John.
I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was fun.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very informative. It was very good. Thank you.
Was there anything else you wanted to ask Chris or Jess?
No, I think it covered a lot, actually. It was very good. It made you think about things, especially because when you haven't taken the lead, you see it, but it's very different then when you're given the opportunity to give it a go then as such. So it is good. It's very good to see.
And we kind of covered, well, John covered the main things that you come up against. And just remember that there's always somebody for you to ask. You're never there in the hospital on your own. So there's people up the chain, and it may be that, that there's other people on the shift that fair enough, they may not be the grade that takes charge, but they have been there a long time with a lot of corporate knowledge. So they will, so use the knowledge that's around you, talk to them to see if, they can give you any heads up. I mean, you don't have to take their advice, but I would advise certainly considering what they say to you.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in the heat of the moment when everything's sort of going on. I suppose you know what to do, but sometimes it slips out of your mind. It just gives you a prompt then as well to fall back on people. So yeah.
It's
Never
having
on
that
your own.
confidence to take that step.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to my actors for tonight. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Fiona. It was really good acting.
Oh, welcome. And there's a bit of fun. Brought humour to the session, which is always important.
Fab. I'm going to stop
I'm
the
off to
recording
have a
then.
real drink now.